Welcome, Utah wrestling fans. We're back after a couple weeks. Today, we're going to be discussing some of the best wrestlers of the last 10 years, best high school wrestlers of the last 10 years. Real quick, first off, our schoolboy, schoolgirl national dual team is in Indiana right now, competing at the schoolboy girl national duels. Team Utah today came third place in their pool. They barely lost a close one to Washington, and then lost a close one to Minnesota for true second. Wrestled tough, just right outside the top 8. Team's good enough, I think, to be top 8. Hopefully freestyle, we can get a good draw and get in the top 8. So I think we'll have a tougher freestyle team than Greco, which is actually typically the case on the schoolboy team. So we'll see how they do the next couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah, just real quick, Washington and Minnesota, those are both two really good teams at schoolboy duels. The few years we were back there, God, it always seemed like Washington and I think one year they were in the finals, and Washington and Minnesota, those are two good teams to be that close to them. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a tough draw for us, and schoolboys is always tough for us because seeding criteria is based off kids nationals, which is on the other side of the country, and it's also based on this year's regional tournament. And the only you can get points is schoolboy. Our regional tournament has, and so regional tournament as seeding points, but only in the schoolboy division. So all of our first-year schoolboys, first of all, can't get any seeding points because they weren't schoolboy last year, and our region is probably the toughest regional there is, and so it's hard to place at our regional tournament as a first-year schoolboy. So seeding points don't work for us as far as we're not on the good end of the stick there. So we're getting drawn in, and yeah, we got drawn into Minnesota and Washington, which I think Minnesota won it last year in both styles. I could be wrong on that though. But Minnesota and Washington are always typically top 4 teams. And, we were right there with them. With Washington, we were winning with, I think 4 or 5 matches left. And then Minnesota, we got down, but we came back and made it a good duel. So hopefully freestyle, we get a good draw, and we can slip in at top 8. I think we're good enough. We have a great team this year, actually. And we'll see how it goes. So tomorrow finishes up Greco, and then freestyle starts on Saturday, finishes on Sunday. It's on TrackCast. You can follow. We're tweeting results as well. So, and then cadets leave on Monday, and then juniors leave the week after that. So lots of in-state wrestling going on, national team stuff. So, but without further ado, let's get to our main topic. We're going to keep these podcasts, 45 minutes or less, keep them a little bit shorter. So we're going to get right to it. We're discussing today top 10 wrestlers of the past 10 years. Let me preface this. For me, so I do a lot of rankings. I do our, Beehive Top 25 or team, individual. This ranking for me was probably the most difficult ranking. For me, it was hard because these guys, I wasn't around when some of these guys were wrestling, so that's why this was probably the most difficult ranking for me to do. Brian Priest, Cole, I know you guys were around when all these guys were wrestling. Nate, I don't know if you were paying attention back then or not, but you guys probably have just as good, if not better, perspective on this than I do. So that's my disclaimer on my rankings. But let's get started. Brian, do you want to give us your 6 through 10, and I'll give you mine, and we'll go from there.
Yep. Before you turn that over to Brian, let me say a couple things. Just before we get into the rankings, one thing I'm going to say is I've been watching lately the debate between LeBron James and Michael Jordan about who's the better NBA basketball player, right? And here's my conclusion. And Brian, you can interject with your 6 through 10 in just a second. But my personal opinion is it doesn't matter. They're both great.
Yeah.
And they're both in their time 2 of the greatest players to play the game. Now, having said that, these 10 guys and even some guys that may not have made the list that are right on the cusp, and Brian has some honorable mentions, but they're all great athletes, great wrestlers, and have all contributed in a very positive way to wrestling.
Also, real quick, before Brian, you get started, let's also say these are the best high school wrestlers, which actually we're gonna take into consideration folk style, freestyle, and Greco. So the one thing we're not taking into consideration is collegiate results. We're taking college, and that's the other hard part is you have a kid that succeeded in college. You know, it's hard to look at him and say this other kid that didn't succeed in college is better than him, was better than him in high school. So it's tough, but we did our best to try and take college out of the picture. But all three styles are in play. We're looking at the best overall wrestler in their high school years, essentially. So, Brian, let's hear your 6 through 10.
I think one advantage I might have, like I said, maybe these years of perspective, but one advantage you have, Jeff, is definitely had the research, the number things. You know, I guess some aspects mine might be a little bit of the eye test, or just, you know, it's not totally based, you know, on that. You know, there's some numbers and stuff involved, but I think you've also have the advantage, you know, like I said, having the record keeping and so forth. So I don't know how divergent our list will be. Before I get into my top 10, a couple of people I was really looking at for putting on there, and again, we're looking at the last 10 years, correct?
Yep.
There's a couple recent wrestlers, you know, I really took a strong look. He didn't quite make my top 10, but Ashton Seeley being one of those, and you know, and maybe if he goes out and, you know, if he does choose to go out to Fargo and have a strong performance, maybe he'd be one I'd put in there. Just because I think he's done well, at least very well in two of the styles. And, you know, Brandon McBride, I know he didn't necessarily maybe do a lot of national things. You know, maybe Jeff would know, but he won 4 state titles, and one of them being in Illinois, where, you know, and that's a great wrestling state. And he won a title there. That impresses me. And then I think he won a title in Idaho, and then 2 in Utah. And those were 2 that, you know, they almost made my top 10. I was really at, but there's just been a lot of great wrestlers. So like Cole was saying, no dishonor being left off of this list or being very close to being left off the list. But without further ado, just glancing here. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
We can.
My check-in at number 10 was Dusty Hone of Cedar City. Not sure if he was a 3 or a 4-timer, but I know he has also some national credentials, and I know him and Taylor Lamont had a couple of great battles. I know Dusty a little bit older than Taylor, and got the best of those, at least the 2 that I saw. But I think of all the wrestlers that have came this way from you know, the last 10 years, he got on my list for sure. Then I have actually a couple of Alta wrestlers. I think they were both at Alta, 9 and 8. Matt Finlay at number 9 and Carson Kuhn at number 8. Well, I love those wrestlers. You know, just kind of their style. They were fun and to watch. I remember Carson. He kind of caught my eye as a freshman. I think he was competing at 106 at the time, and he weighed about 85 pounds. And so he didn't really place in state. He made the final 8, but he was about 20 or more pounds under the weight. And then once he grew, he started tearing it up and won 3 state titles and did some amazing national things as well. Number 7, I have one of the 2 Lamonts, Grant Lamont, a 3-timer, and placed 3rd as a freshman. So he made a splash right away. And a great young man and great talent. He might not have. What maybe kept him out of the top 5 in my mind is he had a little bit of a slower start, if I could say that, incredibly enough. Because again, we're talking the best of the best of the best. But with Grant there, he might not, have had the success that say his brother Taylor had coming out. So that might give you a little hint where the younger brother Taylor might fit in. So he's number 7 for me, and number 6 is Roy Nash, who wrestled at Taylorsville. I had an undefeated senior year. I know he won a national Greco and freestyle title. Had some injury issues, so he wasn't a 4-time state champion like a lot of wrestlers. But once he got healthy, I thought he was very dominant. So again, 10 Dusty Hone, 9 Matt Finlay, 8 Carson King, 7 Grant Lamont, and 6 Roy Nash.
So my list is tons different, but real quick, my list, number 10, I got Dusty Hone as well. Dusty, 4-time state champ, Folkstyle national champ. Number 9, I have Matt Finlay. Again, another 4-time state champ and a junior Fargo national champion. Number 8, I have Grant Lamont. 3-time state champ. He won Folkstyle Nationals and Greco Nationals as well. Number 7, I have Matt Brown. Matt Brown lost 4 times in high school, 149-4. 3-time state champ and 2-time All-American. And then number 6, I have Carson Kuhn. Carson Kuhn, 3-time state champ, as Brian talked about. From his sophomore year to his senior, didn't lose a match, 120-0. From his sophomore to his senior year. Dave Schultz, outstanding wrestler, award winner. He was on the junior FILA world team, and he was a cadet and junior Fargo national champion. So there's my 6 through 10. Tiny bit different. I have Carson Kuhn a little bit higher than Brian. And then
the argument there very easily.
What?
Jeff almost convinced me there,
Should we go ahead and go 1 through 5 as well, and then we can talk
let's take a minute to see what Cole and Nate have, what their thoughts on those list of wrestlers there. And so,
I love your list, and I will say I was coaching, during the time a lot of those guys were coming through. I know Carson Kuhn, for example, we had a Ballantine kid that his senior year wrestled Carson. I think it was probably Carson's junior. I think it was Carson's junior year that we wrestled him in the finals. But Ballantine, I have to admit, and I love the Ballantine brothers. But when I send a kid out there in the finals, I generally have an expectation that they're going to win that match, and even if we're the underdog. But I have to tell you that that was a match where I hoped for the best, but I didn't have high expectations for beating Carson in that match. And I mean, Ballantine actually went back to senior nationals in Virginia Beach that year and was an All-American, and so I didn't even have much of a hope that we had a competitive chance in that match. But yet we go back an All-American in Virginia Beach. So, that says a lot for Carson. Matt Finlay is a great young man, and had a great high school career. As Brian mentioned, those are 2 Alta boys on the list. So props to Barry and his program at Alta High School. But man, I all those wrestlers on that list are great. Obviously Grant Lamont and Lamont family and what they've meant to Utah wrestling is significant. Roy Nash, we did a feature on Roy for the Rumble. The same year that we did that for Dusty Hone. So, if you ever jump on YouTube and just search for Rockwell Rumble, it's a really cool thing that Rockwell did on Dusty Hone and Roy Nash their senior year, and just kind of highlighted them for that event. So great names, great young men.
I forget to mention Roy Nash. His mother was a wrestling. for my father at UNA High School. So it's got some vernal roots.
Nice. So she wore the Indian outfit then.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know. Maybe she was a stat manager, but she cornered me. This was way down at the Beehive Brawl, and we were at that prime rib place after the tournament, and she came over and introduced herself, and got to know Roy a little bit. And so yeah, obviously now there's a couple of guys that were on Jeff's already mentioned, like Matt Brown, that I haven't, and I'm not sure Roy Nash is on Jeff's list yet.
Right, I haven't. I think Roy's higher. I think you have him. What number do you have Roy at?
Number 6, I think.
Number 6. Yeah, I think he's a little bit higher than that.
So Brian's got Matt Brown higher, and we'll find out where, right?
We'll find out where.
Yeah. Here's the thing.
I'm saying our list was very similar, right, Jeff? So
they are similar, but on Roy Nash, a double Fargo All-American 2 years in a row. Who else has done that? He won as a second-year cadet. He won freestyle and Greco. As a first-year freestyle and Greco. As a second-year junior, he won Greco, got hurt in freestyle. As a first-year cadet, he was hurt. He could have been, had he been healthy, an 8-time Fargo champion. And instead, I think he was, a 5-time Fargo champion. In my opinion, 5-time Fargo champion is top 5, no doubt about it.
Granted, arguments there, right? I guess maybe what held Roy back, again, nothing that, is a fault of his, in my mind, maybe from breaking my top 5 was some of the injury issues and kind of his high school accolades, maybe not being, like Matt or Dusty or something like that, or some of the guys that are ahead of him on my list. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's right. I mean, injuries definitely set him back.
Let's hear what Nate has to say about it.
Definitely, Nate, chime in, my friend. Chime in.
Well, first of all, Jeff, on Roy Nash. I hated Roy Nash on track wrestling because he was like a 1%er, and he was like the top guy on wrestling. And I looked up his profile. I didn't even know he was from Utah. And he was like this big fat kid. I was like, of course, he has 3-man round robins. No wonder he's number one. But you can't argue his record at Fargo. My question is why is Matt Brown in the top 10? Based on his accolades.
Matt. Real quick.
What was that name? Because Nate's kind of echoing a little bit. I'm echoing too.
Why Matt Brown? Matt Brown. Here's one of the things, and Brian will attest to this too. First off, Matt Brown's accomplishments in the off season of the regular high school wrestling season are probably much more significant than his in season. But this is where it's like, do you punish a guy? Can you punish a guy for being on a team that maybe doesn't travel and doesn't compete in the big events? So Cypress High School, and I don't remember whether they went to Reno or not that year, but certainly Cypress, they were a decent team, but they weren't one of the top tier teams. They did fairly well, and
he kind of made them. He made them.
Cypress had, yeah, but Matt Brown, I don't think you punish him for being on a team that's not one of your top tier teams. Despite not having a tremendous workout room for Matt, he still accomplished a lot as a high school wrestler.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where he's good. Right.
Hey, Brian. I think we're both echoing again.
Not sure how to fix it. No, it sounded better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all echoing again.
the echo thing going. All right, so want to go 5-2-1?
No, I think we should stop.
Can you splice them together?
Back and see if we can't figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, well, yeah, just come back.
I'll go out and come back.